False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, staff writer, fansite.com. I'm joined today by a man who did not see two of the kids from Stranger Things on a dog walk this weekend, nor did he go on a sexy Santa bar crawl, nor did he have to call animal poison control because they ate vitamins. Cody Williams, content director, fansite.com. How the hell are you?
I have had to call animal poison control before. It just wasn't this weekend. So yeah, been there. Feel your pain. It's crappy. Don't recommend it to anybody. But I'm doing good, man. Fixing to head back to the East Coast tomorrow. So that's big time.
Yeah, I know you're going to be waking up. You're like, what planet am I on?
Yeah, 100%. I'm already really terrible at time science. It's about to get a lot worse.
Yeah, you're going to be like, it's still cold here.
It's still cold. It is still cold. Although I am looking forward to at least like a little bit of reprieve because this morning when I was out with the dogs, it was a balmy 14 degrees. So not having to do that's going to be magical.
14, that's a number nobody likes.
Yeah, I know, man. It's tough. It's Brad Johnson-esque.
I wasn't ready for that. And I wasn't ready for this. My friend throws like a bar crawl around Christmas time, and we did that around the belt line. And as we're getting ready to get ready, the Arizona State podcast and our hair and curlers looking like Cindy Lou Who, looking all super cute and everything like that. We're walking the dogs, and out of an alleyway comes Finn Wolfhard and Caleb McLaughlin.
Love that, dude. That's incredible stuff. I was gonna ask which two Stranger Things kids it was.
No, it's definitely them. I think they live over there, and then I think Joe and Gayton live over by Grant Park, I think, and then
Mm,
the Noah guy, the prop, yeah, he just lives by himself because no one likes him.
the prop. God almighty. Oh my God. So I found out something about Joe Carey that I did not know. Did you know he's like a musical artist as well? And he goes by
Yeah,
Joe? Okay, so Natalie and I, or sorry, not Natalie, the NC State podcast, we don't refer to their by their names. My God. But the NC State podcast and we listened to Alt Nation on Sirius XM because her mom the NC State podcast mom swears by SiriusXM and thinks you're like a lesser person if you don't have it. I really don't understand it. But we're listening to Alt Nation on there, and I'm like, oh, this like there's a song into beginning, and I'm like, yeah, this is a banger. I don't know who this is. Never heard of Joe. And then someone broke it to me that was Joe Carey, and I was like, that is the most mind blowing thing I'm going to learn in 2024.
I mean he's like our peer too, man.
I
Like
know it's I can't quite handle it, frankly.
he went to acting school in DePaul, same place that John C. Riley went and everything
Yeah,
like that, and now he's out there living amongst the dinosaurs in Grant Park.
that's right.
But yeah, after the bar crawl, one of the dogs got into some vitamins, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, 5 hours of sleep, and that's why I didn't work yesterday.
It'd be like that. Yeah, I get it fully.
And you know what the vitamins weren't? They were not alive from Eric Crouch's guys. Yes, we fall started a little bit. The Heisman was handed out. Travis Hunter beat out Ashton Jeanty by a decent margin, not as big of a one as we thought.
Mhm.
Third place would have been Dylan Gabriel. Fourth was Cam Ward, and then Cam Scadaboo, just double
Yeah.
dose of Cam right there. I know and if you're on your ballot, you had Travis Hunter one. I had him three. But any sort of lingering reactions from the Heisman ceremony, things of that note?
So it was definitely, I think I was a little surprised by how tight the margin was. Like it wasn't super tight, but I believe, I can't remember the exact year, but it's like the tightest we've had in like 5 or 6 years. Like it's been a minute since it's been that tight. So I was a little surprised by that, but I guess the Genty argument like wasn't just on Twitter. I guess that was my assumption going into the voting process is that it was just a lot of Boise State fans or a lot of Colorado haters, which I think is a lot of part of the argument of why it wasn't a runaway. And that's not a shot at you, Bueller, because I know that you gave your reasoning and had nothing to do with that. So like, but I do think that in the media, in college football fandom, there is a lot of that. And so like I was confused. I guess I was assuming that was a lot of the case just with the non-media folks talking about the Heisman Trophy race. Turns out I was wrong on that. And I was a little bit surprised by that. I think what I wasn't surprised by is like the margin between those top two and then everyone else. Like it was
Nah,
a why like when you looked at the top 10 in voting and you started looking at the voting breakdown, like Kyle McCord finished 10th in the Heisman voting. Only 10 people had them on a ballot. Like there were only 10 votes that had or 10 voters that had him on a ballot. One like nine had him at third place and one had him at second place. So like that's how wide of a margin is that like someone who is basically like almost a write-in candidate was in the top 10 in voting.
didn't know Jim Boeheim had a vote.
Right. I mean, it was definitely Fran Brown just 10 times, but
Find everybody you know in Camden and vote.
that's right.
Fran Brown Van Buren, that's what his name is, dude.
That's
Apparently.
right.
I guess for me, like, I did not expect the margin to be that close either. I
Mhm.
knew there were people that felt the same way about me or similar. I saw people votes and stuff like that. Maybe it's just the old man in me voting the same sort of way. I will say though, had Travis Hunter not been a two-way player, he wouldn't have won it. Ashton Jeanty would have won it in a landslide.
Yeah.
I think in the future, like it's getting to the point where like you got to be on a playoff team at this point. Maybe this was like the last exception to that. I did find it very interesting that Ashton Jeanty was the only guy who wore his team gear. He's walking around New York just sticking out like a sore thumb, like the only person in New York who's ever worn Boise clothes before.
Yeah, dude, that bright blue with the orange accents, like he was like, you know, people probably thought he was a Mets fan there for a little bit. So I mean, in that way he did kind of blend in.
Yeah, I wonder if Zach Robin tried to get an autograph from him.
Oh, this must be like Luis Angel Acuna or something.
Nothing angelic about that, beefy boy.
No, no, sir. He's Michael Myers back there.
The last thing was just yeah, Travis Hunter's girlfriend. Yeah, that's a thing.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't. we need to tread lightly, but might want to make some business decisions if you're Travis Hunter. Is all I'll say.
Love is love, but love is blind, and we
I'm
saw
not sure that's love,
everything.
brother. I'm gonna be honest with you.
What is love, baby? Don't hurt me. And this is false start.
So I had a question for you because there's someone for me. Was there anyone in the top 10 of the voting that stuck out to you as like, wait, what are we doing here? Because like even Kyle McCord, like I said, he was far down ballot and only had a few votes, but like Kyle McCord had a really good season. Kyle McCord put up some impressive numbers. Was there anyone in that voting block that like you didn't quite understand?
So I'm trying to remember who like 5 through 10 were. So 5 was Scatterbo, 10 was
S-
McCord, 6 was
s-
Daly.
Yeah, six was Daly. Seven was Tyler Warren at Penn State, which is who I'm talking about because Tyler
Yeah,
Warren's a great player. I think Tyler Warren, like he won, oh God, I'm blanking.
he won
He
the
won the Mackey.
yeah.
And so like, but like, hey, I thought that was a little misguided in my own opinion. Like, I just don't think he did the like. I think he's a very good player. I think he's going to be a great professional football player in the NFL. But I also think that when you look at the numbers, they're not there. Like, they're just not. It almost felt like but some voters felt compelled to put someone from Penn State on their ballot. Drew Aller obviously hasn't had the season some thought he was going to have, so they just like inserted Tyler Warren in there because he's been so crucial to them. But like in terms of like how he stacks up to everyone else in this, I don't understand it.
The fact there wasn't a single SEC guy that top 10 is insulting to my intelligence because
Yeah.
Lenore Sellers is better than half those people.
Yeah. And
J
I don't know whether he was 8 or 9, but Curtis Rourke was on 8 or 9, and I'm totally fine with that. Like
yeah, I'm
Curtis
cool with
Rourke's
that
wholly
too.
deserving to get in there.
Yeah, I'm sitting there. I'm like, why? I'm so tired of this artificial inflation of the Big Ten top four. I'm like, we've seen it. Like,
Hmm.
might be a sad weekend for the Big Ten, just to be honest with you. Yeah, it's like I'm okay with Tyler Warren winning the Mackey and everything like that, but like Brock Bowers didn't even get a top 10 vote. Brock Bowers is the best tight end college football's ever seen. He won it
Yeah.
twice. Like,
No,
what are we doing?
100%. No, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I would push back on him winning the Mackey because Harold Fannin Jr. was top two
Yeah,
in wide receiver, right in receiving yards, not for tight ends, in receiving yards, period. And he almost got Bowling Green to the MAC championship. And I understand, like, it is a G5 school. I understand that Bowling Green didn't go to the MAC championship, but like, that wasn't Harold Fannin Jr.'s fault. Harold Fannin Jr.'s a monster, man.
no, like at the start of the year when we were doing the preview way back, our fourth episode on video with the G5 preview, we're like, there's a few people that are going to be well thought of draft picks. Ashton Jeanty and Harold Fannin were like the two were like
Hmm.
without question, and
Exactly.
there's validation there for sure.
No, 100%. But I mean, I don't know. It makes me wonder if we need to reevaluate some of the Heisman voting process, just because, like, the fact that, frankly, for me, the fact that Dylan Gabriel finished ahead of Cam Ward, frankly, the fact that Cam Scatterbo wasn't a finalist and going to New York City, like all of these various things, like I'm sure we could go back through any year and pick these apart, but it was just it felt like a really weird and divisive year for the Heisman. And like not only did I think we see that with Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, but I also think we saw it when it came like down the ballot when we're talking about the top 10 in voting. Like it seemed very, I think regional might be the way to do it. Like we see that in the AP vote, but it kind of balances itself in the wash, out in the wash, because all these regional voting blocks just come together to form an amalgamation. In the case of the Heisman, a second place vote can boost you up so much in that top 10 that it like, I don't know, it's a different process than ranking 25 teams.
For sure. I mean, it's regional. It also wasn't like there would have been an SEC representation. They would have thrown it
Yeah.
behind somebody. Nobody was there. Usually they're the most like parochial about everything like that. And they didn't throw it behind what Sellers, then throw it behind Sampson, nobody.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anybody of note in the SEC this year. Maybe I don't know. Also, the fact that Jalen Walker wasn't even a first team All SEC and he won the Butkus Award, it just shows how ridiculous it all is. Water will eventually find its level in all this, but like the only thing I care about is just win a national title, win your league, just win games, man.
Yeah, just win games, man. I mean, that's really kind of like awards, they're great. They probably help your like when you get to the NFL, they're going to help your Hall of Fame case. But winning cures a lot more than that. And if you're on a winning football team and you're a big reason for that winning football team, then that's going to do a lot more for you.
Oh, for sure. And then when somebody looked at Travis Hunter's Heisman Trophy candidacy, somebody in the back said, "Playoffs? You kidding me?" Yeah. Cody's brainchild here. We're going to power rank the 12 quarterback rooms heading into the playoff. Obviously, we've got four playoff games this week in the first round, starting with number 10, Indiana, going to number 7, Notre Dame on Friday night. So that's going to
Mhm.
be exciting. So let's work 12 down to one. We're kicking it out like multiple people because obviously Georgia and Texas have injury concerns.
Right. And let me start before we get started. Was this really difficult for you? Because it was for me.
Yes, it was incredibly difficult. I think like I feel pretty good about who I have in the bottom third.
Okay.
And the top half, I'm like, once I get to about 4 or 5, I'm like, I don't like any of this.
Yeah, I had a real hard time. I shuffled this list around a lot. I'm still not sure I'm happy with it, but we're gonna roll with it.
And I can guarantee you that ours are going to be completely different. I feel that we can be convinced to each other because this exercise was incredibly difficult. So I'm going to start with 12. I've got Maddox Madsen at Boise State at 12. I felt
As do I.
that was the one I was most confident about. He's played well this year. Been
Mhm.
buoyed by playing in the same offense with Ashton Jeanty. He's gotten better. More importantly, he has the belief of his locker room. But what I think about Malachi Nelson's in the portal again.
He's following his former teammate Bear Alexander's footsteps and hitting the portal again. But yeah, I have Maddox Matson there. I think Maddox Matson has gotten a lot better throughout the season. Like when he early in the season, I was like, oh God, Boise State, like, my prognostication that Boise was going to end up in the playoff. I was like, oh God, with this dude at quarterback, I'm not quite sure we're getting there. And he's really steadied himself, really grown as a quarterback. But I mean, when you start to stack him up against most of these other guys, it's not really much of a competition.
And I have no idea what the rest of we may have the same guy for one, but like I think anywhere else between 2 and 11 is all over the place. So
100%.
at 11, noted Nico Iamaleava hater. I have him at 11. I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all.
So I have him coming soon, sooner than you probably expect me to. At 11, I have Notre Dame and Riley Leonard, just because I think that we talked about it, we mentioned it on Thursday, but I just think that Notre Dame is going to get caught by the fact that Riley Leonard is limited as a passer still. And like he's a great playmaker, he's a great leader, he's like he runs the offense well. He's just not enough of a passer. And so when you're talking about the passing ability of basically everyone else that's going to be above him, he falls behind. Like he's just not as good of a passer as the other 10 quarterbacks ahead of him.
So I let's try to. I got Riley Leonard coming up in a little bit. I feel Tennessee can win regardless of how well Nico plays. I think they
Yeah.
could win multiple playoff games conceivably. Like they could beat Ohio
Hmm.
State and Oregon. I just think there's a limitation there, particularly with the offensive scheme with Josh Heupel. I think that gets the best of Tennessee, but they've got the running game, they've got the pass rush, they've got the dudes. It doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
With Riley Leonard, I don't have him. I have him a little bit later, but I think if you were to play someone like Indiana with a pass rush that's well coached and Georgia with the pass rush, that's going to be problematic.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, so at 10, I have Sam Levitt.
Okay. I've got Sam Levitt probably higher than you're expecting me to. So.
I think he's immensely talented. I think he's grown a lot. I think he's playing with a lot of confidence. Kenny Dillingham's breathing it into him. Same with, I almost said a different word in there. That's way grosser. It's early. It's Monday. It's fine.
It's
Uh,
fine.
but like my biggest concern is for as well as Arizona State hit the transfer portal this past year, this is still a team that went 3-9 a year ago and was a dumpster fire beforehand. There is a lack of depth there, and I think that his youth and relative inexperience is going to get the best of them eventually. It's the same thing with Nico, where like I think you can win 2 games, not three.
So good segue because I have Nico in Tennessee at 10. So I told you I had him right there. So I'm not far off from you. I I still am bullish on Nico long term. Like I still think Nico is a hell of a player, and I think he's going to be a hell of a player. After the Heisman Trophy ceremony, or right before it, I should say, I published on fansided.com the top 10 power rankings for next season and the Heisman Trophy candidates there, not including the guys who may or may not go to the draft because I'm not trying to prognosticate whether you're going to the draft. But Nico was in there. Nico was in the top five, and that's because I'm bullish long term. But right now, we're still in a very much of a prove it mold. We're still very much in a you've gotten better. We saw the last 2 games of the season, particularly the Vanderbilt game, where you played really well in the second half specifically. But I still need to see you put it all together, especially against the highest level of competition which you're going to be facing here. And I still don't have a ton of faith in that right yet.
Gotta have faith. And so we got our 10. Nine's where I have Riley Leonard.
Okay. That's not too bad.
I had to make a minor adjustment here. I'm like, you know what? I'm way too high on him there. I feel nine's about right. Again, I feel this is not a guy that like is going to be a first round pick, just incredibly limited as a passer. Notre Dame, for lack of a better word, lacks athletes out on the perimeter. And when they're going up against Big Ten or SEC teams, particularly the latter, they will get exposed. So that's really all I've got to say there with him at 9. Who is 9 for you?
At 9, I might just be a hater, but I got Cade Klubnik and Clemson, man. I don't think Cade Klubnik's that good. I really don't. He's put up great numbers. He had a great game against SMU. But in that second half against SMU, did he really have a great game or did he just have a good first half when SMU was on their heels? And I think when you look at what Cade Klubnik has done throughout his career, whenever Clemson has needed him to be a guy, be the guy, he hasn't done it. You look at the Georgia game, you look at the South Carolina game, you look at the Louisville game even this year. When they've needed him to step up and be the guy, he shrunk from that moment. And like that bothers me quite a bit. And I just can't get that out of my head that when you put him in a playoff environment, particularly when they're going to match up with Clemson in the first or with Texas in the first round, like I don't have a lot of faith in Cade Klubnik being able to overcome that.
He is playing his hometown team, though, so keep that in mind.
I do
It
not
does.
care.
I don't care. I've got him coming up in a little bit. At 8, I have Will Howard. No, don't trust him at all.
I have Will Howard Lowe as well too. We'll get there in just a second. At 8, I have Sam Levitt in Arizona State,
Okay.
and I'm just I your points are well taken. Like he is young, he is inexperienced, but I also think that, and maybe this is not pure quarterback rankings, but I have enough faith in Kenny Dillingham combined with Sam Levitt that he's not going to ask Sam Levitt to do something that Sam Levitt isn't capable or comfortable with doing. And like to me, that like symbiotic relationship between those two, I think is super valuable and like probably boosts Levitt a little bit. And when he does have some deficiencies in terms of youth and inexperience.
Totally. So yeah, and I guess I'm at 7 now. I'm all confused, all shaken up and everything.
Yeah, you're at
Seven,
7.
seven's seven. I've got Cade Klubnik at 7.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's fair.
Don't really have to. He's the James Franklin of quarterbacks. He can beat He can be people that Clemson should be when it comes to not maybe not. I think he's still really talented. I think that's partially why Clemson just had a talent advantage over SMU. So that's also kind of wild there. Also, we both have Kevin Jennings pretty high apparently.
Dude, I'm a big Kevin Jennings fan. And let me go ahead and spoil it for you. He's not coming for a little bit for me. So we got it. We still got some time to go. At 7 is where I have Will Howard. So like I said, I have him in the bottom half. I don't trust him. I think that I I've been tossing around the idea in my head, and I understand he's high variance, and I understand it's a lesser level of competition. But I wonder if Ohio State would be a better team with Kyle McCord in it this
Yeah.
year. Like I can't escape that thought just because he's a better passer. And yes, you have a talented backfield, but you're not using Will Howard's legs, and so basically you just downgraded in terms of passing, and like that bothers me a little bit.
I mean, I don't think I've actually said this aloud yet. Maybe I feel like he didn't play a lot at Kansas State. I feel like there was like Skylar Thompson was there for a while. Like I feel like he was maybe a starter for like a year and a half or so in Manhattan. I don't
I
remember him
mean,
playing a
I think it
ton.
was like 2.5 years, but he was banged up for a lot of them because it's Kansas State and he's running the ball constantly, so he's taking a lot of contact.
Okay, yes. So we got our seven, right? We got
Yeah.
halfway through. So at six is where I have Kevin Jennings.
Okay. I'm still not at Kevin Jennings. Yeah.
He's the straw that stirs the drink there for the ponies. As soon as they put him into the starting lineup, the team's been better. Preston Stone's in the transfer portal. He's a Heisman contender next year for sure.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be shocked if SMU won the ACC next year. I kind of feel it's the same issue that Sam Leavitt's going to be dealing with at Arizona State. It's like at the end of the day, there's going to be a talent disadvantage with the changes you've made organizationally,
Mhm.
but the experience you'll have from, playing in a conference title bout and playing in the playoff is going to be, it's going to be like I can't even think of the word like invaluable. There we go.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I've got Jennings at six.
No, for sure. So I've got Drew Aller and Penn State at 6. And I think like talent wise, Drew Aller's way higher on this, but in terms of what he's actually done outside of the Oregon game, there's been too many instances for me of Drew Aller not being that guy, not being should living up to his talent, I guess is the way to say it. And so like yes, I came out of the Big Ten championship game higher on Penn State, higher on Drew Aller, and higher on the ceiling of this team. But I do need to see it more than once before I'm like full-throatedly like thinking that it's an entirely different thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've got Drew Aller at five. So
Okay,
that's
yeah.
my thing with him is he's a more talented version of JJ McCarthy. I think he'll have a better NFL career than JJ McCarthy. At the end of the day, his best game was a loss to Oregon. Like win some games, dude.
Hmm.
Like win the game that matters. And there was a guy like that at Georgia who did that really well. His name was Aaron Murray.
Yep, 100%. And
So yeah,
yeah, Aaron Murray's a dude.
yeah, Aaron Murray's a dude. So yeah, Drew Aller's at five for me. Who do you have at five?
At 5's where I have Curtis Rourke. And perhaps at this when I started getting into this top 5, a lot of it was very situationally dependent. And like I think I would take Curtis Rourke on a lot of these teams with their situations, but I worry, like, I think Curtis Rourke at Indiana in this playoff, when you're going to have defensive fronts similar to Michigan, similar to Ohio State, the teams that gave Curtis Rourke problems, his lack of mobility, his limitations as a passer are really highlighted and magnified because of that. And so maybe it's not entirely fair to Curtis Rourke, but because of that, that's why I have him at 5.
I've got Curtis Rourke coming up here in a little bit at four. I've got the Georgia quarterback room with Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton.
Okay.
If it was a little bit, just because there's an unknown component with Gunnar Stockton, Beck, it's kind of amazing. We dump on Beck all that much, and I still think he's better than most of the guys on this list from a talent
Oh, yeah.
perspective. He didn't play very well against Texas, but he played pretty well versus Tennessee, played really well versus Georgia Tech. Obviously, you're playing at Ole Miss in conditions. It's challenging. Battle tested. I don't know if he can raise his hand anymore. Gunnar Stockton, they'll figure it out. But like that's why Georgia won't win a national title if that's wise, because limitations at quarterback. They're going to get somebody in the portal. It might be Fernando. He might be the. It's either. I feel like it's pretty strongly. It might be him.
Fernandez pretty that'd be sick. I'm here for it. So at 4, that's where the 4 is the landing spot for Kevin Jennings for me. And for me, it really came down to when we were talking about the possibility of Alabama making it in the playoff, we talked about Jalen Milroe kind of being that trump card. To me, Kevin Jennings is that trump card, and I understand the inexperience issue, but I also think that what we saw in the Clemson game, in the ACC championship game, that raises my expectations for Kevin Jennings in a big way because he came out in that game and he looked flustered. He looked rattled and he looked like things could get a little dicey for him, quite frankly. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps and almost had SMU force overtime had it not been for a big kick return, one pass, and a long field goal. So, like, that's out of his hands, but he led SMU all the way back and it was almost single-handedly. And so, like, I look at Kevin Jennings as just immense talent and his ability to be a dual threat and keep a defense on its heels. And man, it's hard for me to not think that there's a world where he single-handedly causes teams problems and like maybe pulls off an upset in this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be overly stunned if they won in Happy Valley.
Hmm.
Three is where I have Curtis Rourke.
Okay, nice. I like that.
I feel like at this stage of the game, where we've gotten basically past Drew Aller for me, like you need to have been in college for a while. You've seen a lot of S, and
Mhm.
Curtis Rourke was alive when the Twin Towers fell, so that was good. He was also
Yes.
Canadian, so he didn't care. But like,
Oh,
uh,
Jesus.
you were ready for that,
That
dude.
was.
But like I feel like that's a reason why I think Indiana could potentially beat Notre Dame and then beat Georgia. But that at that point, like you're gonna you could probably get to Atlanta, but at that point, like winning four in a row and having to beat Oregon or Texas or someone of that ilk, like that's too much. But Curtis Rourke is the deodorant for a lot of the size strength limitations that um Indiana has. It's kind of like Max Duggan was like that for TCU for a
Mhm.
while there. Like at some point you're going to get exposed, but this guy can take you further than you probably expected. So that's why I've got him at three.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've got your boys at three, the Georgia quarterback room, whether it's Beck, whether it's Stockton. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but I've fully convinced myself that Gunner can just be Stetson Bennett 2.0. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fully convincing myself of that. That's why I'm comfortable putting them in the top three. But like, I do think that when you look at Carson Beck and you look at some of the stuff that caused him to struggle at times throughout this season, a lot of them weren't like totally Carson Beck problems. Yes, he could have
No.
played better under pressure, but he was under a ton of pressure because the offensive line was playing terribly. He's under a lot of pressure because he's having to hold on to the ball because his receivers don't separate as regularly as you would like them to. With Gunnar Stockton, I think those problems are mitigated. And I think the offense is simplified to where it's quick routes to where you're not asking these receivers to, you know, take 3 seconds to get open. You're asking them zero point 0.5 seconds, just break off your route and get open. And like his mobility, I mean, we've been talking about Gunnar Stockton. I feel like a lot of people have been talking about Gunnar Stockton like he's a nobody, like he just came in off the street like he was. This is a highly recruited guy. This is a dude with a
Yeah.
lot of physical talent who set records in Georgia. So like I do think that we might be like as a national media, not just you and I, but like we might be underrating like the upside of what Gunnar Stockton can be, especially with 2 to 3 weeks of practice behind him.
I mean, he played 2A football up there at Northeast Georgia by the North Carolina, South Carolina mountain area range, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Blue Ridge Mountains, baby.
Blue Ridge Mountains, but yeah, that's where he's at. Mike Bobo recruited him to South Carolina when he was Muschamp's OC. This is different than Brock Vandagriff playing at some rinky-dink private school in Greater Athens against nobody.
Yeah.
Like Georgia high school football is a huge deal. In a lot of instances, like I don't take you seriously unless you're playing 5A or more. Like you need to be going up against like Camden County or Lowndes or
Yeah.
Parkview or anything from Gwinnett, like my high school does. Just a bunch of white dudes trying to play really hard. But Gunnar Stockton can play. Also, shout out to our buddy, or my friend James with Gunnar Stetson Stockton the fourth, just running.
That's right.
So that's good there. At two, I've got essentially your boys. I've got Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning at two. That's who I've got at two. I'm gonna try to say this as delicately as I can. I don't trust Quinn Ewers against better competition. He's a walking stiff out there. But if you put
Mhm.
Arch in there, you can catch people by surprise. I think you have to play both each game in different spells to keep people on their edge because
Mhm.
like if you start with one guy and don't go with the other, I think eventually like the threat of surprise will help Texas out considerably. If it's just one, I don't know if I trust them to win 4 games. They could, but like
Yeah.
the talent's there. I wish yours was healthier, and I wish Arch had a little bit more experience versus high end competition. He's done really well. Again, he played at what 3A high school in Isidore Nimitz in New Orleans, which is like the private school of note in a metropolis out there in the country.
Right, 100%. Just to the Gunnar Stockton point real quick, like I trust the Georgia coaching staff, and I think anyone's an idiot if they don't. And they chose Gunnar Stockton basically ostensibly over Brock Vandagriff. Like that should tell you like who they believe in and who they trust in this spot more so. At two, I have Oregon. No shock that I have the Texas boys at number one. Like they are my boys. But I have Dylan Gabriel at number two. I j- I don't know, man. Like I'm just not all the way there. I understand that it's been great. Everything's gone there, but I feel like Oregon's best games this season have been defined by Jordan James in the backfield and their defense. And like I feel like Dylan Gabriel has not been like a force multiplier. And for all the criticism I gave Bo Nix, there were times last year where he was a force multiplier. Like I'm not gonna like take that away from him and like be blind to that. I don't think Dylan Gabriel has necessarily been that for this team. Maybe like if you want to point out the Ohio State game, probably his best game of the season. I'll give you that. But like outside of that, I don't quite see it with Dylan Gabriel, especially I think Oregon has a lot of advantages, and it's one of the arguments I made about against Bo Nix last year. Oregon has so many advantages on the outside and with their weapons and what they're able to do there. And when you get into the college football playoff, there might be teams that can mitigate that. Like I think about a Texas if they were to get into that matchup. Texas has one of the best secondaries in the country. I think Texas could absolutely mitigate some of those weapons that Oregon has to offer. Then it's on Dylan Gabriel to make throws, to make plays. And do I trust him fully more than anyone else to make those plays? I don't. I just truly don't at this point.
So I have him at one mostly because he's been healthy this year. He's been
Yeah.
the most steady. I would have said if Beck and Ewers would have been healthier, they're probably closer to the top. I think they've seen a lot more than what Dylan Gabriel and Oregon does. I'm reluctant to think Oregon's going to win the national title because you're going to go up against Tennessee and Ohio State's pass rusher, Georgia's and Texas, and he's
Yeah.
small and he's going to get hurt. And I hit it for him. I want to see him get drafted on day two. I think he's going to be, if he goes to the Niners, man, that would be, or the Seahawks, like that's it.
Mm.
We're talking like a multi-year Pro Bowl kind of guy, like a Dak Cousins, someone
Yeah.
of that ilk, where like he's in the league for a long time, but he's also 26.
You know.
uh, but I'll also go back on this. There's a very, very good chance Oregon Redcoats it loses.
Oh yeah, I would not shock me at all. Would not shock me in the slightest. Like, I mean, it goes back to what we've said for months now. Like, there's no great teams in college football this year. There just aren't. Like, Oregon is the lone remaining undefeated. I still don't think they're great. I think they're very, very good, but I think there are a lot of other very, very good teams. And when you put very, very good against one another, any of them can win.
So just to kind of go back on this. So like we both have about 5 or 6 teams that we think can win a national championship. We think Oregon and Penn State can, right?
Hmm.
Or you,
Correct.
yeah, I was like, I think Cody's on Penn State. We think Georgia and Texas can.
Correct.
And is there anybody else beyond that that you feel like could do it?
No, I think it's those four teams, man. But like, here's the thing. That's in terms of me prognosticating because the thing about those four teams that I would choose as like my national championship favorites, like one of these four teams is going to win a national title. The flip side of that is all four of those teams are flawed. All four of those teams can lose. And so like if all four of them were to lose, then someone else obviously could win a national championship. So like it's a very weird thing where like if I'm making a pick, I'm only going to pick from that group of four. But
Yeah.
I'm full, like, I can't say that with 100% confidence because, like, I think there is so much parity in this college football playoff.
And then if you go like, if I want to kick it out to like 100% confidence interval, throw Tennessee, Arizona State, and Ohio State probably in there. I feel like that,
Yeah.
but that's even more than half the field. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah. It's a very interesting, like, very interesting field that we have in this particular season. Like I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is the perfect year to have the 12-team college football playoff for the first time because I think there are 12 teams in this field, frankly, that you can't rule out for winning a national championship, which even in the four team era, there have been teams where it's like, okay, TCU, I'm sorry, you can't win a national championship. Cincinnati, okay, I'm sorry, you can't win a national championship.
Michigan State, you can't win a national championship.
Exactly.
It's so let's before we crown a national champion, let's recap our 12 and then move on to the next segment. I will go first because I'm looking at it and I'm going to screw this up. So at number 12, I have Boise State's quarterback room with Maddox Matson. At 11, I have Tennessee's quarterback room with Nico Iamaleava. At 10, I have Arizona State's with Sam Levitt. 9, Notre Dame with Riley Leonard. 8, Ohio State with Will Howard. 7, SMU with Kevin. No, 7, I have 7, I have Clemson, Cade Klubnik. 6, I have SMU, Kevin Jennings. 5, Penn State, Drew Aller. 4, with Georgia with Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton. 3, Indiana with Curtis Rourke. 2, Texas with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning. 1, Oregon with Dylan Gabriel.
And I have Maddox Matson and Boise at 12. I have Notre Dame and Riley Leonard at 11. At 10, I have Tennessee and Nico. At 9, I have Clemson and Cade Klubnik. At 8, I have Arizona State and Sam Levitt. 7, Ohio State and Will Howard. 6, Penn State and Drew Aller. 5, Indiana and Curtis Rourke. 4, SMU and my boy Kevin Jennings. 3, Georgia and their quarterbacks at large. 2, Oregon and Dylan Gabriel. 1, my boys at Texas, Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Just play Quinn Ewers between the 20s and then get Arch Manning in the game.
You're Andy Dalton, bud.
That's right.
That is a tough pill to swallow here. But after you swallow that pill, I'm going to ask you a question here. Cuddy, do Hast, do Hast.
Ooh,
Will, will we get multiple first round upsets this season in the playoff? Before we begin, I'm going to give you the lines from ESPN as of last
okay.
night. Notre Dame is laying 7.5 at home to Indiana.
Mhm.
Penn State is laying 8.5 at home to SMU. Texas is laying 11.5 at home to Clemson. Ohio State is laying 7 at home to Tennessee.
I'm gonna go Duhas two S's, which I kind of realize goes counterintuitive to what I just said about parity. But when I look at this, there's only one matchup that I'm looking at that I'm like, that scares me a little bit. And that's Tennessee, Ohio State. Because I'm sorry to Ohio State fans out there, but this Tennessee defense is going to be able to slow down Will Howard. It's going to be able to cause that offense problems. I do think Ohio State's defense is going to have plenty of success shutting down Nico, but you're going to get in a rock fight. We've seen Ohio State in a rock fight this year, and it was in the Michigan game. They lost the Michigan game. And for as limited or as much as I don't trust Nico in the offense entirely for Tennessee, there's no denying that they're a far more talented offense than what Michigan had to offer, and Michigan still won that game. So, like, I'm looking at that one, but then I look at the other matchups here, and I don't know, man. It just feels like there's a discrepancy between the two teams that I can't quite get there.
Okay, I'm sort of there with you in the sense that, like, if there's going to be one, it's going to be Tennessee upsetting Ohio State. It's 8-9. Spread
Hmm.
says otherwise. I'm gonna go do Host with one S
Okay.
because I think there's a pretty good chance Indiana gets Notre Dame.
I mean, it's entirely possible. And again, like I said, I'm contradicting myself with what I just said about parity.
Well, we're gonna pick these games on Thursday
Yeah.
anyway. I would say the next game where there's potential upset would be SMU upsetting Penn State, and then Clemson upsetting Texas is probably the least likely.
Yeah.
But I still think there's probably a 15% chance where Clemson could get Texas. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, this isn't. I don't know what the schedule predictor thing is, whatever it is, percentage probability, but like Clemson needed to beat SMU to get to the playoff, and they did that. I
Yeah.
mean, Texas shouldn't have lost to Georgia, and they did. And Penn State nearly beat Oregon. I feel that at this stage of the game, this is why I think having the expanded playoff is so exciting. Yes, it's a home game for 4 of these teams,
Hmm.
but it's college football. It's unforeseen. We don't know what's going on. Are the elements going to impact? Are the elements of it all going to hurt Tennessee? Are they going to hurt SMU? Indiana's going to be fine. Clemson will be fine. But it's like I want there to be chaos. I feel like this is the playoff that where this could happen. I think we're both confident. Like, though, I think there will be at least one.
Yeah, I do think there's absolutely going to be one. Like, I do not see a world where we're getting just straight chalk into the second rounds. Like, I just don't see that happening. It's just a matter of who pulls it off. And I will say, like, one thing that makes me a little hesitant when it comes to SMU Penn State is the elements. Like you're taking a team from Dallas, Texas, and making them play a game in Happy Valley in late December. Like that worries me a little bit. That doesn't suit the SMU brand of football as much as it obviously does suit the Penn State brand of football. That's why they play the brand of football that they do. So like I worry about that. You mentioned Indiana having a decent shot of upsetting Notre Dame. That tracks because obviously they're in the same state. They're used to these elements. That's not going to be like a huge shock to the system. They played in Columbus, and no offense to South Bend, the environment there is not going to be the same as it was in the shoe. Like it's just not going to be. So like I think that Indiana is uniquely suited to where I could like you can definitely talk me into it. I'm not predicting it as of right now. Maybe I'll change my tune by Thursday, but like as of right now, like you can talk me into that. You're gonna have a hard time talking me into the Clemson Texas one just
Yeah, no.
because I think that when we like SMU is a good team, I don't think SMU is among those very, very good teams that I was talking about earlier. Like I think they're a very good team, but you're not getting that second very. When we've seen Clemson against very, very good, which that would be South Carolina and that'd be Georgia, they have not been the same team that they've been in every other
No.
game. So like that's what worries me about there. And like Texas has flaws, no doubt about it, particularly on offense, but you know where they don't have many flaws on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, that's the least likely upset to happen, which is indicated by the spread.
Correct.
And yeah, looking like looks like the Arizona State podcast, I need to buy our tickets to the Peach Bowl pretty soon because we're gonna be swallowed up by a bunch of Texas fans in Atlanta.
100%. Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, okay. So I feel pretty good. I think 1.5 is the right number of potential first round upsets. I went on
Yeah,
one side, you went on the other side, and this is false start. It's fine.
that's
It's good.
right. Hey, we got to disagree every now and then.
Yeah, in between disagreeing, I think we got to talk Portland. Let's do that next.
Let's do it, baby.
Okay, so I'm looking at this sheet here. So Miller Moss left USC going to Louisville. I really like that. Justice
Hmm.
Haynes is leaving Alabama. I don't know if he's going to go to his dad's alma mater of Georgia. That'd be really cool, but I don't see that happening. Julian Humphrey left Georgia to go to Texas A&M because why? And Jackson Arnold to Auburn. Kind of feel like that makes sense. I did predict Michael Van Buren Jr. to LSU. That makes sense. I think he's going to back up Garrett
Hmm.
Nussmeier for a year. And then I had a Daniel Kalen, the guy who was, the homegrown guy, Nebraska. They brought Dylan Raiola in. Now he's going to UVA. I really like that one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not many moves in this that I don't like care for. Like, obviously, Justice Haynes hasn't picked a landing spot yet, but like in terms of the landing spots we have, like I think Miller Moss to Louisville is my favorite. When you look at what Jeff Brom has done in his 2 years at Louisville, it was bring in Jake Plummer, not Jake Plummer, what Jack Plummer?
Jack
Jack
Plummer,
Plummer.
yeah.
Yeah, God, sorry.
The
I
Jake
got
Plummer you
the
have at home.
I got the Arizona State podcast on my mind, and we're just thinking of Jake the Snake. But no, Jack Plummer, you bring him in there, and then you bring in Tyler Shuck, and you have success with both of these guys. I think Miller Moss is an upgrade from that. I think Miller Moss is a better player than both of those guys. And so like you get him under Jeff Brom. I'm really high on what that can mean for Louisville in like an ACC that we just saw this year. Super winnable, super attainable for anyone that wants it because you have Florida State. I don't see Florida State bouncing back to being an ACC competition. Miami, there's a good chance that when Cam Ward leaves, when Damian Martinez leaves, that even if they replace these guys, it's still not at the level that Miami was able to get to this year. SMU is going to be a problem still, but like there is a vacancy for Louisville to get in there and compete with Clemson and SMU, in my opinion. So I really like the Miller Moss one. Justice Haynes, I will say, like it would be cool if he went to Georgia. I think the early word is it's kind of a Michigan Ohio State battle for him right now. Wouldn't hate either of those landing spots. Both are going to have vacancies there. Edwards and Mullings are gone from Michigan. Judkins and Henderson are gone from Ohio State. So there is a vacancy that
Oh
Haynes
yeah.
can fill easily in either of those spots. Julian Humphrey, I feel like this is just the embodiment of the transfer portal era. Like Texas A&M offered him a bag and he got the bag. Like that's all it is. You're going from one high level SEC program to another one. Jackson Arnold, I understand the risk that Hugh Freeze is taking. I am not confident it works, but I think it's a risk you have to take if you're Hugh Freeze in Auburn.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you got to get some guy. I'm really nervous about Oklahoma next year. I am.
Oh,
It,
it
it,
could get bad, dude.
I don't think John Mateer is going to leave. I think John Mateer will probably potentially follow Jake Dicker into his next job here in a year or so. But also at that point, the Pac-12 will have more stability there. John Mateer could be leading a playoff team next season, or conceivably. Like I feel like, do you really want to go to the worst spot Oklahoma's been in since John Blake was their coach?
Yeah, I mean, like I Oklahoma's not attractive right now. Like I've seen some Oklahoma fans online who are rightfully upset at the way this program is trending. And one of the things was, they were talking about they probably figured at some point after he got benched that Jackson Arnold was hitting the portal. Like I don't think that was like breaking news. But one of the things that Oklahoma fans had been sold was that yeah, but one of the big issues that the offense had was all of our receivers were hurt. All of those guys are going to come back. Well, no, they're not. They're all in the
No.
transfer portal now. So like you have nothing to lean back on right now. Like Oklahoma is in a horrible spot where you barely made a bowl game this year, and I think you are going to be objectively worse next year.
Follow me on this. Am I insane to think this? I'd honestly rather have the AD head coach combination of Zach Selman and Jeff Lebby over Joe Castiglione and Brent Venables right now.
100%. Like, I mean, are we at Oklahoma if we're talking about this? Because yes,
Yes.
like at Oklahoma, like
Yeah.
at Mississippi State, I don't want either of them because it's Mississippi State and they have their own set of issues. But like, I think at Oklahoma, you're absolutely right because what has Venables shown to this point that makes you have faith in him? Like his every ounce of credibility he has is built up from him being a defensive coordinator at Clemson. I'm always hesitant about defensive minded head coaches. Granted, I've been proven wrong many times, and like there are many examples like Dan Lanning, like Kirby Smart, like you go down the list, there's many great examples. But I think that when you're at a program that needs to fix something, which Oklahoma clearly needed to fix something in like the wake of Lincoln Riley taking away their entire roster, I don't trust a defensive minded head coach to do that. I trust a defensive minded head coach to elevate and build a culture and be a CEO type. Brent Venables is now objectively like has his hands less on the defense, is not able to elevate that the way he was at Clemson. And I don't think he's a CEO type because if he learned from anyone as a CEO type, it was Dabo Sweeney, who I don't trust as a CEO type in modern college football at this point anyway.
No, Dabo is one of the best of all time. The game's changed. So,
Yes.
like, probably the two best CEO types of all time are him and Urban Meyer. And obviously, the game's changed. Deion Sanders is thriving in that role right now. Trying to think who else is in there.
Sark, Kirby.
Sark and Kirby have pivoted to that direction. Lanning's kind of getting there too. But yeah, like I don't know, Oklahoma's in a tough spot. I get the whole Jackson Arnold, like you got to bring him in there, but like at the same time, I feel like there was a quarterback. I'm never gonna be able to erase that the Tennessee game from my memory. It was so bad. It was just like, oh my God, it was one of the most pitiful quarterback performances I've ever seen.
No, dude. I mean, I was watching it at a bar in Wyoming at the time because that was when I was on vacation, and man, it was brutal on both sides. Let's be clear. Like Nico didn't play well that game either.
Yeah. So, any thoughts about Van Buren or Kalen or anybody else you want to talk about in the portal?
So I really like the Van Buren to LSU because like we saw at Mississippi State, he has a ton of potential and like he's very raw, like it's still not there. And like, I think that with the right development, he could be something. Now you get him into this LSU situation where, like you said, he can learn for a year behind Garrett Nussmeier. And I think what that's going to allow him to do is learn how to be like a quarterback and not just like an athlete playing quarterback, which is what I think he largely was this past year at Mississippi State, which is what he was recruited as. Like, I don't think that's, reinventing the wheel. And Mississippi State had to force him into that position because of the talent deficiencies of the Bulldogs. And so, like, I think that at LSU, you have a year to just coach him and like get him to develop as a quarterback. Then he comes in and you have a dual threat quarterback in the ilk of a Jaden Daniels with that type of rushing ability, that type, and if he can develop as a passer and get into that LSU offense, I think that's when LSU's offense is at its best. Because if you remember Joe Burrow back in 2019, he was a lot more mobile. He was a lot, had a lot less injuries and mileage on the tires at that point, and his mobility was a big factor in that offense being as dangerous as it was.
100%. Yeah, I figure like that was the place I projected him to go to, and then I didn't realize Nussmeier was coming back. I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot. I'm like, no, you're actually right. He's just doing the Dante Moore, Jaden Rashad. I'm gonna sit this one out and delay get a little bit better and stronger and everything like that. Two wide receivers I want to touch on, and then maybe three quarterbacks, and we'll go on to the next
Yeah.
section. So I believe it's the wide receiver of note. I'm gonna make sure. I think it's wide receiver of note. Yeah, Eric Singleton Jr., Georgia
Hmm.
Tech, probably the highest guy ranked in the portal. Looks like he might be going to Ole Miss. That's where he's been crystal balled to. We'll see what happens. He's been tied to Georgia, but obviously I think Ole Miss is I feel like that would be a good fit.
I mean, Portal King, man, Lane Kiffin's out here doing it. And the other team I've heard recently mentioned is Texas, which I think also makes a lot of sense. Another team that we've seen hit the portal pretty hard over the past few years. So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to, I think, shock some people with how good he is because I mean he was phenomenal at Georgia Tech this year, but for as good as Haynes King is, he is limited as a passer. So you get him in these situations where the quarterback play is going to be substantially better, and I think he could be a guy that really burst onto the scene, where whether that's at Ole Miss or whether that's at Texas or whether that's at wherever he goes.
For sure. Deuce Robinson back in the portal now. When initially, I think he picked USC over Georgia. Maybe he comes here. Maybe he
Mhm.
follows Miller Moss to Louisville. Keep an eye on that one. The one I wanted to talk about was Casey Concepcion, the wide
Mhm.
receiver at NC State. What have you heard about him?
So I believe he's down to six teams, most of them in the SEC. To me, it's kind of looking like Alabama from what I've been reading, and I think that makes a lot of sense, man. Like you have Ryan Williams, obviously he's going to be 18. Congratulations, brother, next year. But he's going to be like, but outside of Ryan Williams, is there anyone in that wide receiver room that you're really feeling confident in moving forward? Like, there's
No,
not. And like that was an issue we talked about not just this year. That was an issue that was present last year to some degree. And like we've seen like Isaiah Bond go to Texas and still not really be a factor. So like maybe there are like maybe this is Kalen DeBoer's actual next big challenge is figuring out how to fill out this wide receiver room and get it back to the high level that we saw not too long ago when we were talking about, Jamison Williams, Devonta Smith, not to bring him up in a negative light, but Henry Ruggs, like all these guys that were running through Alabama at that point. So I think Casey Concepcion, it was a surprise that he stayed at NC State last year. Obviously, that was a bad decision on his part, given what NC State ended up being. Now he's into the portal, and I think that he's going to elevate his stock again because whether it's Ole Miss, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Georgia, whether it's any of these SEC teams, he's going to be in a really good spot.
yeah, I think he's going to be a big steal or big pickup for somebody in the portal. Let's talk about the three highest ranked quarterbacks according to 247 that are uncommitted. Also, it's a crock of poo that Connor Wegman's rated higher than Miller Moss. That's ridiculous. I don't
You
understand.
know,
Ahead of Darren Minsa too. Put
five
Connor Wegman
stars are
right.
hard to quit, man.
I know. So is Connor Wegman apparently. So you still have LSU backup Luke Kremenhook. You still have Cal quarterback Fernando Mendoza and Duke quarterback Malik Murphy. For Kremenhook, I keep thinking Ole Miss. That's the one I keep going back to. I feel like that would be fun, but again, it's an idea of a quarterback, whereas you've seen Mendoza and Murphy play and play well.
No, 100%. It is definitely the idea. And I mean, we saw glimpses of that idea at Florida State, but I'm not gonna hold that too much against Kermit Hook just because like Florida State was so damn bad. So like I'm not going to, you know, hold that completely against them. But Ole Miss does make a lot of sense. And I think that when you look at Lane Kiffin's track record over the past few years, I don't know if you remember a few years ago when he signed Jackson Dart, he also signed Spencer Sanders and he also signed Walker Howard, who's now back in the portal. But like, he has no problem bringing in competition through the transfer portal for his quarterback room. So like bringing in a former highly touted recruit, giving him a chance to compete for the job, that's something we've seen Lane Kiffin do to this point. So would not be a surprise to do that. And I think it could probably work out well for both parties.
Totally. So my focus and attention has been on Fernando Mendoza. We thought,
Mhm.
okay, last episode on Thursday, like, oh, he's definitely going to Miami. Well, they haven't really pursued him yet.
Yeah.
So the four teams that he's been tied to are Georgia, Indiana, UCLA, and Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I think that's a little bit far reaching. The other three, I think, are totally in play because I feel that like what's it Tino Sunseri, the quarterbacks coach at IU, is now going to go to UCLA and be the OC. So that makes the
Mhm.
Bruins interesting. Georgia, Indiana, obviously they're in the playoff. I feel that like he's the guy that you could kind of bring in and start right away. But I feel like one of those two teams is going to get him.
Yeah, I think Indiana would make a lot of sense. And like we saw, I don't know if you saw the numbers that were released about like NIL spending and stuff like that. Indiana was in the top 10 this past year, which didn't know Indiana was about their football like that, but shouts to them for getting that done. And I think that if they're going to continue that spending, which they should, based off the fact that you got to the playoff in year one under Coach Sig, so why not continue doing that? I do think that they have a little more incentive than Georgia, which makes them like a little bit more dangerous in that thing because Curtis Work's gone. Curtis Work doesn't have any eligibility left. Like there's no chance he can come back. Carson Beck can still come back. Gunnar Stockton's still there. Jaden Rashad is still there. Fernando Mendoza could go to Indiana and basically be like, okay, yeah, man, here's the keys to the offense. You're ready to rock. And like, so like there is a world where that happens.
Same with UCLA. Like, I don't know how much
Yeah, 100%.
eligibility Ethan Garbage still has or whatever, but like, also I think the fact that there's probably some familiarity there from his days at Cal, competing in the Pac-12 then, so that could be a
Yeah.
possibility as well. I have no idea where Malik Murphy's going to go. I had an idea and now it's gone.
Yeah, I have I'm very curious to where he goes because like obviously he's a talented guy. I don't think he has quite lived up to the hype that he had when he committed to Texas previously, but like he's a good player. Like when he's played, he's done nothing but win. Like he won when he had to start at Texas. He went 9-3 with a Duke roster. And granted, there were a lot of other factors there. It wasn't solely Malik Murphy, but like he's done enough to show that he's a good quarterback. I do wonder if it's somewhere like you look at a I wonder if it's somewhere lesser than we're probably projecting him based on his pedigree, but I think it's somewhere like a Virginia where Anthony Calandri is in the portal. And do you really want to, bank on whoever is behind him? Because I don't think that's a whole lot of anything that you're really banking on there. Do you I don't know. There's a lot of different things. And like Malik Murphy's also an interesting thing, an interesting commodity because my read on the situation is that Manny Diaz really wanted Darian Mensah. And it was like, hey, Malik, you might just want to hit the portal because we're going a different direction. And like, so I don't think it's necessarily that like he's seeking out new opportunities. I think he was kind of told to go seek out new opportunities. And I think that's a very different dynamic. And it makes it harder to figure out where he's going to land if you don't like, if you can't really like diagnose his motivations for why he would want to go to the portal, where he would want to go.
I mean, he could go to a place like Michigan. He could also go to a place like Mississippi State. It's so all over the place.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. I don't know what to do. But I will say, whoever does sign him, you're getting a good quarterback. You're getting a good player.
100%. Imagine going from the academic standards of Duke to the academic standards of Mississippi State.
Hey, it's gonna be like a vacation.
It's just football all the time. And all right, let's move on to our penultimate topic here with some heat coming.
Mhm.
This is going to be fun. So we have the four Power Four vacancies filled, and UNLV is kind of like the next tier up there. So we're going to power rank the five incoming head coaches based on we think chances of them winning right away. So we got Bill Belichick in North Carolina, Barry Odom at Purdue, Scott Frost going back to UCF, Dan Mullen going to UNLV, Rich Rodriguez returning to West Virginia. Of those five, who do you think has the least amount of relative success year one? Like, who's going to struggle the most?
I'm going with Scott Frost at UCF, and like I'm higher on that higher than you. Wow, I didn't realize that was going to be as much of a tongue twister as it was, but higher on that higher than you are. But I do think that Gus Malzahn did not leave that program in a good place. Gus Malzahn had been slowly like bleeding out basically in terms of the Knights, and like I do think Frost will hit the transfer portal. I do think that I think there's a chance UCF goes to a bowl game. But I do think that relative to expectations, going to a bowl game is not what UCF wants. And so I think when you're relaying it to expectations, I think it's going to be a little bit of a letdown and not going to be an immediate turnaround. Honestly, I liken it a little bit to Matt Rule's first year at Nebraska, ironically, where everyone knew like long term what the ideal prospects for this were going to look like and you got excited. But then year one was kind of like, oh, we're not there yet.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. This is Scott Frost is gonna have a terrible first year at UCF. I don't even think it's particularly close with for like I think the gap between him and four is the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
He's going back in there after having failed at Nebraska and basically getting rehabbed by Sean McVay doing who knows what on the Ram staff. You're going back home, and who says you can't go home? Me, apparently.
Mhm.
The This is not the UCF he coached before. This is not the group of five, whatever it is. You're bringing in Mackenzie Milton. You're probably gonna have like Shaquem Griffin on your staff doing whatever, but you're going from one of the best programs in the group of five in the American to the most geographically isolated program in the Big 12. You're dealing with a bunch of stuff with the fallout of Gus Malzahn. Knights may win four games next year, or a very Scott Frost 5-7. Yeah, that's without question the worst of those by far.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the next four can kind of go in any order, maybe. Maybe you've got some different opinions that who would you take next? Like who's gonna have not a lot of success in year one?
I'm going, and maybe this is emo hedging it, but I'm going Bill Belichick at North Carolina. And the more I've seen people talk about this, the more I've like read people smarter than I am talking about this. I am like relatively high on what this could potentially look like for North Carolina. I do think there's still a chance that it fails spectacularly and it goes really poorly, which I'm definitely baking into this as well. But I also think that the optimism is not necessarily rooted in immediate year one success because I think that you bring in Bill Belichick to establish a culture, you bring in Bill Belichick to give yourself some cachet, but you don't see those things pay off immediately in a big way in year one. And so, like, the fact that North Carolina is coming off a 7-5 season, I I have a hard time seeing them, like, frankly, improving upon that and with the roster that they currently have. But you give it 2 years, then I think you can start to see that improving. But I think in year one, it just might not be like the immediate Bill Belichick effect.
I've gone back and forth with who I have 3 and 4, and at 4 I'm gonna go Dan Mullen at UNLV.
Okay. And that's who I have at three. So I'm
Yes,
I'm I'm with you.
and I have Belichick at 3. So
Okay.
here's
Yeah.
so I'll unpack this. I agree with you. Belichick has the potential to have long-term success. He's going to be coaching there probably into his mid 70s,
Hmm.
pretty comfortably, youthful. For whatever he is. I think this is reinvigorating him. I think he's finding this new challenge. He's going to do something cool there in the next 3 to 5 years or whatever before he hands it off to Steven or whatnot. There will be learning curves at first. I think the Tar Heels are going to win probably about 6, 7 games next year. But it'll feel more stable than what it was this past time. So that's good.
Yes.
My concern with Dan Mullen is you're going in there and you're replacing Barry Odom, who took what was actually working under Marcus Arroyo. You got a guy who didn't really want to recruit, wants to do schematic stuff there. He may have success right away, but like he needs to have reevaluated some things of why he failed at Florida and
Mhm.
get back to what made it work from at Mississippi State. This could potentially be a disaster in 3 years. I think that there's a potential to have success there, but I I'm kind of apprehensive on that hire potentially working there for the Rebels.
No, I'm with you to at least in year one, like when we're talking about immediate success, because you look at a lot of what made UNLV really good this year, and a lot of that might be gone. Like they had one of the better actually they had the best receiving core in the Mountain West. No question about that. Ricky White's probably gone. The other guys are probably either hitting the portal or going to the NFL draft. You don't know what's going to happen with Hajj Malik Williams at quarterback, and if he were to follow Barry Odom to Purdue, then like you're really screwed. I have Dan Mullen at three just because of what you said about the schematics. Like I think his schematics are good enough to raise the floor of UNLV no matter what the personnel looks like in a Mountain West conference that I still think is going to suck next year. So like, and I think it's actually going to suck worse because Boise's going to pull back tremendously. And there's not a whole lot of other teams in the Mountain West this year that you looked at and were like, oh, I'm really high on what this is going to look like, next year based on the talent I'm seeing right now. Like there's just not a lot of programs, to me at least, that fit that mold. So I will give Dan Mullen the benefit of the doubt there because I do think he is a great schematic mind. But in terms of year one success, I just think the personnel might betray him a little bit.
Yeah, Mount West is gonna have a rough time. I feel Colorado State's gonna be pretty good. I think
Hmm.
Fresno will be better. And then uh Sean
Uh,
Lewis and San Diego State,
yeah, but
Bronco, Utah
they were
State.
so bad last year.
Yeah, Mount West is not going to win the group of five next year. You're looking kind of probably more at like Sun Belt,
AAC,
AAC.
yeah.
Like, yeah, not the MAC.
I mean, John Summerall's staying at Tulane, so I'm going to go ahead and put my early vote in for Tulane.
I think that's fair. So at two, I've got Rich Rod at West Virginia. I
Okay.
think he's going to come back and he's going to know that like the dynamic has changed from the Big East back in '06 to being in the Big 12 now. There is still some infrastructure stuff that I think he's got to, wash out the blend, get the mayonnaise out of the crevices of the Neil Brown era and get back to, being the fun WVU football we
Hmm.
grew up loving and everything like that. They'll probably win about 7 or 8 games next year, but like
Yeah.
again, there's a chance there may be a satin kimono fitting there. I feel like in year two is really when it's going to work, and that's where I've got West Virginia there. I think they're going to be better, but not considerably.
I do not have Rich Rod at two. If that's, that's a little spoiler alert. But I do have Barry Odom at Purdue at number two. And I mean, frankly, he's at number two because it's hard to be worse. Like, things really bottom out this past year. But like, I do think when you look at Barry Odom, you look at his track record, you look at his lengthy resume, I think Purdue is going to benefit from having for lack of a better term, an adult in the room. And that's not to say Ryan Walters isn't an adult, but he was a highly inexperienced and perhaps underqualified head coach. Barry Odom is not underqualified. Barry Odom is not inexperienced. Barry Odom has both those things in droves. So I think that when you get Barry Odom in this program, it's going to be an immediate effect. And I also think that Barry Odom, with what he just did at UNLV, he knows how to identify, like, I'm not saying high end talent, but the talent that's going to fit what he wants to do to raise the floor and, raise you from a 1-11 floor that you were just at. And so, like, I think the improvements are going to be immediate. I don't know if Purdue makes a bowl game. I still, I think that might take a couple years, but I'm high on Barry Odom long term. But I also think in the short term, we're going to see the signs of immediate things start to turn around. It's very different styles, but I honestly liken it a little bit to year one of Coach Prime at Colorado, where yes, the Pac-12 schedule did not go in Colorado's favor there, but I think we still overlook the fact that they won three more games than they had the year prior to Coach Prime joining the Buffalo staff, and more importantly, they looked better. Like they were just a better football team, and I think that's what we're going to see from Purdue this year. It's just going to be a like clearly different experience watching Purdue football.
Yeah, I've got Purdue at one because the floor is so low. This team is going to win 4 or 5 games, maybe push for a bowl game as well. It depends on who they bring into the portal. Again, having, for lack of a better word, an adult in the room works. We've got a guy who's been at a terrible, like, he entered Arkansas when they were at pretty much rock bottom. He got
Yeah.
fired from his alma mater because Gary Pinkel did not leave that in the best spot. Goes to UNLV, had probably the best 2 year run of UNLV in our
Mhm.
lifetime.
Yeah.
Purdue wasn't that bad that long ago. They were playing for a Big Ten championship 3 years ago. Like
Yeah.
you can get back to respectability. You're absolutely right, though. It's going to be like Deion Sanders year one at Colorado or Jonathan Smith year one at Michigan
Mhm.
State.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good comp too. Yeah, I like that, the Smith comp. So one, I obviously have Rich Rod at West Virginia, and I think it's everything you mentioned is absolutely in play. Like, I think that Rich Rod fits the brand that is ideal for West Virginia football in like so many ways. Like, he's fun, he's exciting, and also like on top of that, I think Rich Rod as an offensive schematic mind is able to overcome the shortcomings that West Virginia is always going to have geographically. Like they're always going to have them. But then I think him coming from Jacksonville State with the success that the Gamecocks have had the past few years, I think it's going to be even more so that because if you bring a Tyler Huff, if you bring a Trey Stewart, if you bring these playmakers that you saw at Jacksonville State last year or these past couple years, man, that's going to like immediately like just put a rocket up their ass, quite frankly. Like I think the fact that West like yes, it may be 7-5, 8-4, which is not that vast of an improvement from 6-6. But I think that 7-5, 8-4 isn't you know, fighting around and like infighting with the middle tier of the Big 12. I think it's you knocking off the top teams in the Big 12, but maybe losing some games you shouldn't. But I think that variance is more West Virginia football, and I think that variance is more long-term sustainable for West Virginia to have success.
totally. I mean, he had success at the fifth biggest college football brand in Alabama, behind
Yeah.
Alabama, Auburn, Troy, UAB
South
South, maybe
Al.
sixth. Yeah,
Yeah.
sixth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
you
like
had,
he
yeah.
had a lot of success.
So then you're going to the biggest brand in West Virginia. Marshall's a distant second, and then you're probably in Appalachia, like what? The biggest brand, probably bigger than Pitt, probably bigger than App State, JMU. I'm trying to even think who else is in that. Well, Virginia Tech's probably the biggest brand in Appalachia in
Yeah, but
retrospect.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're also like, you know, Virginia Tech is not like, yes, in technically they are in like the Appalachia region, but at the same time, like when I think of Virginia Tech, specifically when they've had their most success, and this goes all the way back to like Michael Vick in Beamer Ball, but like it's the Tidewater region. It's not necessarily like you're thinking about like the mountains, you know what I mean? Like you're thinking more the coastline.
Yeah, you're thinking like Norfolk and Newport News
Hmm.
and all that other stuff here. But when I think of Antonio Banderas, I think of Bulldog and Bolin, 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 Bolin. Yes, you're gonna move on to our final topic here. with some bowling with Antonio. We're going to recap the Crampton Bowl, and we're going to preview the Frisco Bowl and the Boca Raton Bowl. Again, anytime there is a bowl game on the schedule, Antonio and I and Cody we're all going.
Mhm.
Except not playoff games unless we absolutely have to. He's kind of in timeout for what he did in the Big 12 championship, so he's not going anywhere on the 20th or 21st, whatever. It doesn't matter. But Crampton Bowl. So how did Smokey handle, taking a look around there in Montgomery?
Um, he was appalled. I also told Antonio to not speak because we were in Montgomery, Alabama. He said Bulldog, and I said, "Oh God, here we go." Um, he got into one altercation with a South Alabama fan, and he asked them. The thing about Antonio, as we've discussed many times, his knowledge is fluid, to say the least. He didn't understand the difference between Alabama and South Alabama, and he thought they were the same thing. So he kept like mentioning the Crimson Tide, and I'm like, Antonio, the Crimson Tide are not playing in this game at all, and. Then he started, and so I was trying to explain it to him, and I was like, this is like the little brother to Alabama. And then he decided to go up to South Alabama fans and start just calling them little bulldog, and that did not go over particularly well.
No, he also thinks a Jaguar and a Bronco are also Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean it's four legs, bro. What do you want?
Yeah, but I think like Major Applewhite kind of thought he was funny wearing that on the sidelines,
Oh yeah,
looking like Vince Wilfork and Lance Taylor. Just that was the problem. Lance Taylor couldn't get a play call there because he was just laughing the whole time, and I think that's why
100%.
South won the game, right? Didn't they?
Yeah, South one. Yeah,
That
I
was
mean
why.
Major
Because
Applewhite. My God, man, like. He had that game in full control and then decided that he didn't know how to manage a game, which, what do you expect from a first year head coach that kind of got thrust into this position? But that South Alabama largely dominated the game and still only won by a touchdown. And that was a major Applewhite problem.
Antonio was the distraction, but I think it really set the tone for Bolin. It's in my head. I can't remember how many there are, but yeah, so we got that figured out with that. We got out of Montgomery alive. That was the most
Yes.
important thing. So we got two games to preview today. On Tuesday, we got the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl between Memphis and West Virginia. The biscuit song is Dirty Rotten Biscuit. And Antonio told me what he's going to be wearing, Wes Borland gear. He's basically wearing a Folgers cup, like the Folgers 10. Like,
Hell yes.
I'm like, how'd you find one that big? And he's just like, Yeri owns.
We can't tell Antonio this story, but when I was younger, I had there was a dog that we had who got its head stuck in one of the old metal coffee tins. And so he might just think it's Bulldog, like coffee is Bulldog now. So like we can't let him know that.
No, no. He thinks it's dog food.
That's right.
But yeah, he's got his coffee tent ready to go. I'm like, it's gonna be a little chilly in Frisco, Texas, and he's just like, whatever,
Not
Yeri
worried
owns.
about that.
There's a guy walking around in a coffee tent looking like the Tin Man, screaming Yeri on his phone.
Yay! Yay!
Yeah. I don't know who the WVU interim is, but Ryan Silverfield's not going to be amused. And I think the only reason we're going there is because, well, it's the only game being played that day, and Yeri owns mostly.
Yeri Jones and the only game being played. Yeah, Ryan Silverfield is a pretty much a no nonsense type of guy. I think he's going to be real dialed in for this game, and I think it's probably going to be a bad day for West Virginia, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm taking Memphis to win that game.
Yeah, I'm taking Memphis pretty handily.
So after walking with Memphis, we are going to be walking to Boca Raton, Florida for the Boca Raton Bowl on the 18th between the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers and the James Madison Dukes. The Bitland Biscuit song is In It Together Now.
That's right.
Uh,
Uh, Going
what's he
through the
what's
Limp Bizkit discography is quite enlightening, let me tell you.
so what's he wearing for the Boca Raton Bowl? Like what's he walking up on stage, Antonio, walking into Schnellenberger Stadium, whatever the hell it's called.
So I'm gonna be honest with you. One of the reasons I wanted us to go to the Boca Raton Bowl is I wanted Antonio to be able to put the costumes to bed. So actually, all he's wearing is his normal Speedo that he always wears, and then we're just putting a little bit extra baby oil on him. But other than that, it's just the same thing.
I mean, like, Westmoreland wears like a certain piece down there, and then he builds his costume around that. That's essentially what it's, just base. He wants to bronze out there.
I
Who
mean,
is your
I
more
imagine
excited?
everyone in Boca looking like George Hamilton. Like that's just what I think of when I think of Boca Raton.
Crispy Antonio Banderas.
That's right.
So who's more excited to meet him, or who are more excited to meet, Tyson Hilton or Bob Chesney?
Oh, it's definitely Tyson Helton. You know it is. Come on, man. And actually, you know who it is. And I'm excited for this meeting. It's Big Red, bro. The
Yeah.
Hilltoppers mascot. I don't know, like if Antonio calls him a bulldog, I might lose my S on him because like that's like the least bulldog thing I can possibly think of.
The reason we also picked this, besides we're going to allow his skin to breathe and bronze a little bit more, he wants to show Big Red his playbook because it's Scoop Clifford and Scoopy too.
Scooby Doo. Yeah. He might think it's Clifford. You're right about that. We might be screwed.
Bob Chesney wants nothing to do with this, and Tyson Hilton just takes something that was growing outside the Daniel Boone National Forest, and he's just going to be down in Boca.
Yeah, let's not forget that Bob Chesney came from Holy Cross, and I don't think Antonio is a real Holy Cross vibe.
You know, Antonio doesn't respect Bill Simmons, and neither do I. This is false start.
Oh my God.
I don't know, but cousin Sal's there betting on the games, and then God, what's Joe House just eating a lot of food, hanging out on the floor.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Antonio's definitely hanging with House and Sal. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Shack House.
Shackos.
Oh my gosh, the guy was like juicing his own vegetables, listening to like bad brains in his Holy Cross dorm.
Yes, absolutely.
What a vibe, dude.
Complete vibes.
So yes, we'll have some more bowls to talk about with Antonio. We'll recap those on Thursday's episode.
Who
We're
you
doing
got in this
okay.
one?
Oh, we got in this one. God, you know what? Give me the Dukes. Let's just do it.
That's who I'm going with, too. I got JMU in this one. I don't know. Western Kentucky just lost by 40 in their conference championship game. I think they might be packing it in.
Big Red's just gonna be there. That's all that matters.
Yeah,
When you're more than there in spirit, you got to be Big
that's
Red.
right.
I chew in Big Red.
It's literally what I was just thinking. I was like, don't say it, Cody. Don't say it.
I still love Big Red hanging out in the Brad Keselowski's Miller Lite car.
Oh my God, yes.
What a legend. And what a legendary episode this was. This was episode 135 of False Start. Not 125, because I'm not going to forget the 10 plus all the recaps you did. They really threw editorial things off for a loop here. But yes, you can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X, @Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams @TheSizzle20. You can follow the show @CFP False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Give us that 5-star review on Apple because it's just the right thing to do. It's the holiday season. Whoever subscribed to the show, thank you. We're one closer to our goal.
Yes.
When we get to 31, we're gonna do a Chick Stick a Long Ball episode for Greg
That's
Maddox.
right. Shouts to Craig Maddox and Tom Glavine. We love you so much.
True story. I got an autograph from Tom Glavine when I was 2 at the Park Air Kroger up there in East Cobb.
Hell yeah.
So this would have been like 91, and like let's give us a cute little blonde kid, and I got Lucky Charms and Tom Glavine.
Honestly, that's like the biggest day of your life at that point.
Yeah, they were like Tom Glavine was like he's not a baseball fan. He's like he sure is. He likes to watch baseball and have ice cream. He's like that's fair.
Yeah. Oh my
Legend.
God.
Put your back
Oh,
into it.
put your back into it.
We got Cy Young winners over here, and this is false start.